So, are we ready to roll, Maestro? Let's do it. Today, you know how fired up and excited I get when we start doing anti-aging and, longevity seminars. So that's what we're bringing today. I am Dr. J. Joey here with my good friend Cameron, and we're going to discuss, if you will, one of, if not the world's most powerful, life-sustaining, anti-aging, energy-producing, cost-effective supplement under the sun. And that's why I'm wearing my green today, because we're talking chlorophyll, a complex green pigment. This is found in plants, what makes them green, algae, and like we were talking about earlier, the bacteria, which is where all life began. And it's produced by our sun's energy. Found abundantly, again, in the green leafies, which so few people are consuming today. And we're going to talk about how this kind of leads to a lot of the stuff that we have going on. And also in the pills of fruits, something that Western society, we tend to discard. Apple pill, peach pill, maestro, if you will, lemon pill, orange pill.
Oh, I ain't eating that.
Chris, you with us? Flip that one for me if you would. So, but again, I mean, we just throw our nutrients out, right? And so what chlorophyll does, the sun, chlorophyll, through what's known as photosynthesis, we're taking the light energy from the sun and turning it into a chemical energy in the body.
Just like a solar panel.
Bingo. Solar panel, good point. I mean, and which everybody's jumping on now for a source of energy, the most powerful source that there is out there. And, what is life? Quality life is energy, which is why you and I were talking about how, what was it, last weekend, the sun came out after a couple of days of rain, and what did everybody do? Boom! Mm-hmm. They're out amongst it, right? In college, everybody can attest to this. When spring came around and those cloudless days of sunshine, nobody was in class, dude. We're out getting ourselves some energy. And even when people use the term, man, if you hear somebody say, I feel 10 years younger, what are they talking about? They're talking about energy, right? So again, for those who have to, FYI, the science, chlorophyll is a molecule it's a porphyrin ring with a magnesium ion in the middle, where, again, with its hydrocarbon tail, but blah, blah, blah. We won't get into that, man. That's the chemistry and the physiology, and we'll save that for a seminar later. So, Chris, if you would, we convert this from the sunlight energy, and then chlorophyll activates to energy producing what's known as triphosphates. These are coenzymes. Most people know these as ATP. And of course, the real popular one right now, especially in the cosmetic world, I'm hearing a lot of this, was NAD. And so these two are both energy producing enzymes. We talked about ATP in a seminar before, where, in my opinion, this is your currency of health. So the more of this that you accumulate, the wealthier your health status. This is that one thing that as we get older, this is our bank. The more energy we have, the younger we feel. So what they do, these two, they're energy-rich molecules that convert, basically, the conversion of the glucose. And on the back end of that, we're getting oxygen. What is life? Oxygen, energy, right? Through what is known as, we talked about that earlier, the Krebs cycle, and you have one less known called the Calvin cycle. And also, the beneficial effects of the chlorophyll are antioxidants, dude. One of the best sources of vitamin A. And with vitamin A, anytime you're thinking skin, vitamin A. Anything in the epithelial layers of the body, vitamin A. Vitamin E, We talked about that earlier in cardiovascular health, and we'll talk about it a little bit more because this is also a great way to prevent injuries and reduce injuries associated with tendons and ligaments. And then we go on hit here because it's a great source of magnesium, one of the best sources of magnesium, which has 500 plus different metabolic changes and functions in the body. Iron, again, because we have chlorophyll, is almost identical to the iron. The exception is the iron has that molecule of the heme, and chlorophyll is magnesium. That's basically, they're almost identical. Then you have the vitamin F component, which we talked about earlier. This is your polyunsaturated fatty acids and like, drives the calcium. And then, of course, we have that blood factor for clotting, vitamin K in there. Matter of fact, it's one of the only natural sources of vitamin K that I know of. So, which sadly, if people are on blood thinners, it's just a shame because all this energy that they really are missing through the chlorophyll, and this is why some doctors will tell them, be careful not to eat spinach, because spinach is a high source of chlorophyll, one of the highest, 3,000 milligrams, I think, per gram of spinach, right? So it's a great source. And then there's also a product, or a substance called lecithin, which is a precursor to these phospholipids that our body produces to protect the cell. And also the really cool thing about lecithin is anywhere where you find in nature where our creator puts cholesterol, like in an egg, you're going to have lecithin because it is an antagonist to the cholesterol. And what's beautiful for the aging process is this lecithin, what we call sheathing on proteins, waste protein byproducts. It'll sheathe them and Teflon coat them to help them get out of the body, which is what aging and senescence, the term for aging, is all about. That's the key component. We won't dab too deep into that, but it's the protein accumulation in our bodies that eventually bring us to our demise. Chlorophyll has been well documented for the anti-cancer ability and through what's known as an anti-mutagenic, meaning it keeps that DNA intact so it doesn't go into a mutated state, which is cancer itself. So what a powerful, powerful, powerful product. And again, under the sun. So that's why I say cost effective, and we're not utilizing it. All these other special tonics and things that people are selling out there for anti-aging, longevity, and energy, right? Energy drinks and whatnot. Here we're missing something that is so easy. We can consume it on the inside, right? Chris, if you would.
So what was the thing about the doctors with the patients on blood thinners saying not to eat spinach?
Well, because if you're on a thinner, then you don't want something that's going to coagulate or thicken the blood, right? Or increase the protein of the fibrinogen protein in the blood, because these people are on there, they put them on these thinners forever, one thing, and to thin the blood. So here you have something that actually strengthens the blood, which is beautiful about chlorophyll. And I use this on skin-related issues and ulcers, but as far as a healing protocol, this is one of the most powerful I've ever seen in my clinic. And if you want to, let me go through that, and then we're going to talk about how I kind of came across all this. So with chlorophyll, and the illness associated with it, man, I mean, and I'm just going to give you a few. It's not limited to just this, but these are some of the things that I've seen in my practice clinically. Any type of skin-related issue, especially ulcers. So I had a patient of mine, sadly, she was a quadriplegic. And she would come in and we would use the chlorophyll ointment, or she'd take this home. And this was the best thing that she had ever used for the bed sores associated with the stagnant lack of movement. And she would try everything under the sun as far as what the pharmaceuticals had out there. Nothing worked like this chlorophyll. I kid you not, sometimes with some of these external wounds, it's almost working so fast you can almost watch it. I mean, it's not one of these things that takes weeks, it's days. So then you have that. You have also think about gastrointestinal. Chlorophyll helps repair that mucosal membrane lining of the stomach. So we're talking what? Colitis. Certainly ulcerative colitis. Dental problems, dry sockets in the mouth. I'll have patients just literally chew the chlorophyll. Now, like you were talking about earlier, how when you play soccer and you slide and out there on the field and you get that big green streak on your shorts, boom, right? That's chlorophyll, right? So it stains. So I'll tell my patients, chew this, try to hold it in the mouth for a couple minutes. And then, of course, you don't want to run around with green teeth, so you drink some water and flush it down. But especially with pain like in the mouth and the ulcers and stuff, if they'll chew these and hold it, usually within a matter of minutes, the pain is significantly decreased. And so with that, if not, about an hour later, chew 2 more, right? Same thing with the ulcers in the throat. It's just amazing stuff. And the other beautiful thing with chlorophyll is that endocrine imbalances. And we're going to talk about that, especially things like ovaries, testes in the male, and thyroid issues. So besides the benefit of liver-related issues, liver disease, one of the key components here is that besides the detoxification aspect of this, chlorophyll, which me and cholesterol, I think it's a scam, way over sold in our society. It's a hormone-related issue, in my opinion. So, but chlorophyll is known to lower total cholesterol and LDL. So if I get a patient comes in and, they're on these statins and they hate the side effects of these cholesterol-lowering meds, Doc, what can I do? Well, there are a lot of things, if you're my patient, that we're going to do other than the statin drug. So this is just one of those many tools that we have to naturally bring that under control. And then, we talked about the musculoskeletal, not only the pain relief, but then again, because we have what? We have vitamin E. Think ligaments and tendons. Vitamin E, a primary precursor to their strength, as well as magnesium and manganese. And then again, we talked about the vitamin A. Anything skin related, dude. Anything skin related, A first. And also, probably the most powerful antioxidant for cancer is vitamin A. So, and then of course, we mentioned the K aspect of that. But if you will, Cameron, so just go through that clinical reference guide of mine, if you will, on chlorophyll and just touch some of the things. These are just some of the clinical things that I use it for. Again, covered some of those there, but read what you got there. And then I want you to touch on that foretail B12 for a second.
Okay, yeah, so the chlorophyll complex, let's see, internal healing, pain, bleeding, loss of blood, low red blood and
low red blood cells. This has been one of the best products I've found for increasing, low red blood and platelets. I had a patient of mine, nothing that she was taking would bring these platelets up. We started her on chlorophyll, and I mean within days, her platelet count had come up to normal. It's powerful stuff.
Go ahead. All the stuff that you already talked about, really. Pre and post-operative, GI tract ulcers, colitis, liver disorders, fat-soluble vitamin deficiency, stomach pain. Yeah.
So it's a plethora. And guess what? It's natural. It's under the sun.
Vitamins A,
Chris, would you flip that?
E, F.
Yeah.
Magnesium, iron, potassium, trace minerals.
Potassium, another key component here, right?
What, lecithin?
And the lecithin was what I was telling you. That's that antagonist to cholesterol. That's the
blood purification.
Right. Purifying the blood.
Okay.
Which is, as we're going to talk about here in just a minute, and when we talk, I want you to read that little excerpt about the foretail B12, because that detoxification of the blood is sort of what brought me my interest to this. Because when we look at longevity, we're going into detoxification to the key. So I'll step on that in a little bit. But before I jump into that, we talked about the fact that due to this oxidative stress on the end of the Krebs in the Calvin cycle, that oxygen-related or oxidative stress, by reducing that, we're increasing the mitochondria strength. Mitochondria need this little boost, if you will, to help them do their job, which is energy and detoxification of the body. So when we look at some of these endocrine disorders, they're associated with toxins, chemical that we're starting to see accumulate earlier and earlier and younger, and we're winding up with the disorders such as the thyroid gland, and we talked about that with those halogens that we find in water now. Remember, the ovaries, the thyroid, they want iodine. They don't get iodine in our diets. Instead, they're getting fluorine, chlorine, and bromine, very toxic halogen poisons to the body, which is why we're seeing the cases like we are with so much hypothyroid in our country. So much. And this is a precursor to aging. Well, you got the hair falling out. You got changes, unhealthy changes in weight gain, all associated with the aging. And it occurring now in teenagers. Here's chlorophyll. Again, green leafies. Well, they're not popular in our society, so is it any mystery why we're becoming a society with greater and greater numbers of these endocrine imbalances, which again, when I talk about the endocrine disruptors, this is the precursor to what's known as senescence, or the process of aging. So you want to touch on that and 4-tailed-B12 for me?
So, yeah, but real quick. Okay. Yeah. So it says it cleans the blood. So would that be something that's good for like a detox? Like, do they put that in some?
Absolutely, positively detox, because when we're detoxing the body, but go ahead. The question is that, as far as detox, this is the primary one, and this is what's so beautiful about this. So, when I touched on this, we have the detoxification first comes through, of course, the kidneys and the liver, and through the skin as well. But first, and as well as the lymph system. But first, it has to get through those organs, and where's that going to happen?
You're right, in the blood.
The blood. Yeah. So what's really cool about chlorophyll is this. We are a lot like the plant system. The plant system on this planet, and we mammals, we have a circulatory system. That's the cool thing that we all have, and that we have in common with plants. Their circulatory system is water, right? Ours is blood. So the plant detoxifies itself through that circulatory system of the water. We detoxify ourselves through the circulatory system of the blood first. Because whatever toxin the blood's going to run through, it's going to pick that up. Some other components to it, as we get older, it's the skin. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the blood picks it up first. Then it runs it through the filter system. So if I have healthy, strong blood, which is what chlorophyll gives us, increases RBC count and platelets, and a detoxifier of anything that we use it for, now we're going to take that and we're going to run it through the filtering system of the kidneys.
So the kidneys have to do less work. And
Bingo.
They're better off.
And then the biliary system with the gallbladder and the liver, you see. That's why I hold on to that gallbladder, people, if you possibly can at all costs. But this is the first pathway. And this is where, again, when I looked at what happened here with Cat Monroe, if you'll read that, this started me on this whole journey, if you will. All right, so let's talk a little bit read about him, and this is in the, first of all, let me pass on this real quick about Cap. When I first read about this guy, I Googled him, and there he was on Google. About 3 years ago, and this was probably 15 years ago or so, and even as far back as 5, but about 3 years ago, I Googled him, I couldn't find him. I don't know if maybe they couldn't find his birth certificate, I don't know, but he may still be there today, but I know the last time I tried, I couldn't find him. But read a little bit about Cap, because this is very, very interesting. And let me see, when I look at situations when it comes to nutrition, there are, I pulled this off of a book by Dr. Royal Lee, The Protomorphology, The Principles of Cell Autoregulation. So this book, most of this stuff in here is from the 1920s, dude, all right, 1940s. This is when the study of aging was becoming very, very popular. About the 1950s, the 60s, they switched it over, like I talked about, and they went into, the actual treatment of aging, and we lost what's known as geriatrics, and so everything came away from the study of why we age, because the money was to be made in all those symptoms associated with it. And then there was another great doctor. By the way, Royal Lee was a dentist by trade, one of, as well as a rocket scientist. And then the other one is nutrition and physical degeneration. So this guy right here, he's like anybody who knows nutrition and studies physical degeneration is going to know about Dr. Winston Price, another dentist. But what he did, which I loved, and we talked about him in other episodes, podcasts, instead of going, hey, man, why all this dental decay and how am I going to fight this thing and try to treat it? He wanted to know the cause, which is what I love. And this is why I got into chlorophyll, the cause of aging and why, because he did the same thing. He went to these countries where they didn't have the dental decay. They didn't have these bone-related deficiencies. And he said, what are they doing? All right. And I mean, it's a pretty thick book, pal. So by jumping around the world, he found the causation of the dental decay and dental caries, right? Which was countries' processed foods, especially those of processed flours and sugars. Boom. So that's the way I like to learn via my research and base my opinions on what I consider common sense. So let's go with that. A little ditty about Cap Monroe, if you will. Okay.
I just Googled him. I couldn't find him either.
Okay. Right. But here he is in print, and this is probably 15 years old at least, maybe 20. But go ahead and just read what Dr. Royal Lee had discovered.
Okay, so Cap Monroe, he lived in Florida, and that's where Dr. Lee had first heard about this plant called
Teledansia.
Yeah, and he was drinking tea. Cap Monroe was, and that's what he accredited to making all the way to 135 years old.
So let's say he's somewhere, he's definitely, I don't know now, I think they say the oldest age is 120 something, right? But let's just say he's somewhere there. He's definitely way over past that centennial mark of 100, right?
Right.
Okay, so go on.
Well, most people get to 80 and they don't.
Right, and they start looking, checking it out, and that's where a lot of people will tell me, well, I don't want to live that long, right? Especially when I tell them this story. But I ask them, I say, well, listen, if you could have vitality with that 90 plus 100-year-old, would you take it? And almost everybody's going to say across the board, hell yeah.
It says the Tillandsia plant in the Spanish moss. So this is found in Spanish moss.
So that's what this is. So think about this herb. Okay, so what this is, he's down in Florida, North Florida, in the swamp area, right? Now everything just actually south of us, about an hour south of us, you can find what's known as Spanish moss, but of course it's Louisiana, Florida, big in Gainesville when I went to school. So this is Spanish moss. And like I talk about this again, I think about herbs, and you want to talk about an herb, a functioning herb, anytime we look at these herbs that basically survive in not so favorable conditions, well, you got an herb, Spanish moss, that thrives in trees without dirt. Now tell me another plant that you know of that you could pull out of the dirt, lay it on the sidewalk, and it's going to thrive, right? I mean, think how powerful this is.
Wasn't there one that was growing up in Siberia?
It's Siberia ginseng, for example, right? What you're talking about. It survives up there, a powerful herb when it's used properly and when it's produced properly. So this is what we got. So this guy was drinking tea out of that. So, Royal Lee's putting this stuff together and going, So let's break down this and find out what it is. Well, what they found was there's a very special form of vitamin E that is a precursor to sex hormones. That's why when I give my patients this product, known as Fortel B12 from Standard Process, I call it Love Potion number 9 because it just brings up that positive feeling. It's also one of the products that I use for male and female infertility. All right. So again, you want youth back? Well, how about precursor to the sex hormones, which are just running rapid in the youth? So that's where I started making some sense of this stuff. And when I started researching that, what is this plant loaded with, pal? Chlorophyll. So now it makes sense to me. Because again, when we talk about this, what it has the ability to do is detoxification, like you're talking about this property. It picks this up and carries it through the blood to get it out of the body. Aging process, I'm not going to go detail here. I've written about it. You can find it on my website. Eventually, proteins which give us life, and we are protein. But as they break down, they have to get out of the system just like you would with your garbage. I mean, if you don't throw the garbage out and you get this broken down proteins over time, you're going to get a waste product. You're going to get toxic. So without getting too much detail, that's what happens in our bodies. And whatever organ that is that gets the most toxic through that protein breakdown over time is going to eventually be the one most likely to shut down first. So we have to get the toxins out. Now, as a youth, we do this as a kid because think about a kid when they're born, right? From that age to about 10, the growth. Well, with that growth, you have to have a byproduct, and that means a breakdown of proteins, right? So that protein, that thymus gland helps get that out via the blood with the chlorophyll out of the system. Now, when we get older, it becomes a gland called the thyroid gland. So you see how when we have toxicity to the thyroid from these chemical toxicities that we're talking about, and we slow this thyroid down, it's going to increase our aging process. Now, so we're still talking about, though, we still have to have the chlorophyll to help that thyroid to eliminate these toxins. And as we get older, it gets into the skin, and that's why you tend to see with the elderly people some of the aging that occurs in the skin first. That is over the age of 40, we're looking at hormones, testosterone in male, estrogen in the female, primarily, right? So these and the prostate in the male releases a fluid that helps remove these toxins from the body. And the better we're able to remove these toxins, the younger the body is able to maintain its energy and maintain its function. So that's a little deep, so we're going to get off of that for a little bit, but again, it's the chemical buildup. And here's proof of this guy. And what I love is, let's go find out what he did, and let's break that down and see if this guy is not like the poster child, if you will, of longevity. So, and we talk about the blue zones, give those credit too, right? But a lot of these people, again, eating off the land. So chlorophylls in their diets, and they're eating these fruits that we're talking about and the pills. So here it is, boom, right? Natural source. So the accumulation of these toxins over time, we got the cancer we talked about, right? Obesity, another one, because when we're controlling fatty lipids, we're also controlling obesity. So we have that going on in this country, rampant. Type 2 diabetes. And there's a correlation with all the autonomic disorders and the inflammation. So if I got something like this that I can help to eliminate those toxins, why wouldn't I do it? And I'm talking, again, like I talked about in the beginning, this is cost effective. This is basically a very inexpensive supplement. But you got to find somebody who's carrying it. Well, Standard Process has chlorophyll complex, and I start there, right? And a lot of products that have it, like the Gastrix that I use for colitis and stomach-related irritated issues and ulcers, it's in that. So products be of many. Yes, so let's go. Great job there too. And now we go into what we just talked about, that protein waste byproduct. You can go ahead and flip that one again. And we get into the beauty of the brain cognitive degeneration that's coming on in our society today. That's the dementia. So where does chlorophyll fit into all this? Remember, it modulates inflammatory pathways, number one. That reduces not only the pain that we were talking about with inflammation, and then, of course, with inflammation, aging, which I was talking about as well when I look at the autonomic disorders. But the other big one that is major, rampant, and we are all know somebody in our life that is suffering with these neurological and degenerative changes. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and just straight up dementia. Dementia is probably coming before the Alzheimer's is, right? This is associated with, again, the damage that's done due to the if we have a chemical that's helping to reduce the oxidative stress put on the neurons, all right, we're going to help improve their function and their longevity. And that's what chlorophyll has the power to do. So in these environmental toxins that are starting to increase at a greater rate, and they talk about the the plaquing of the Alzheimer's and whatnot, and how now they're saying, okay, well, this is not the cause. Now, the new big thing that they're discovering is a primary precursor to this neurodegenerative process is known as BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So what they've been able to study now within the brain, the higher amounts of this BDNF, the increased probability of these degenerative diseases. Alzheimer's again, Parkinson's, on the rise. Dementia is going through the roof, man. By the time we get about 10 or 15 years down the road, every other one, if we don't change something, it's going to have a problem with dementia. And we all know it. We all see this occurring day with somebody within our family, our life, right? So if you would.
Yeah, I feel like people that are 50 right now, those are the people that have had enough time with how everything's been to be the worst that we've ever seen. I feel like.
And you know, with that right there.
And then 40 will be worse and 30 will be worse.
And that's just why when I look at something like a statin drug that lowers cholesterol is like this, that's a necessity for the brain. So, I mean, you talk about something, the side effect of that damn drug is dementia.
Isn't that why, like, so whenever you have, like, in nature, say a pack of coyotes kill someone's cow, like that happens every now and then off a farm, right? That's why they have the sheepdogs and stuff. They'll eat the brain first.
Highest source of energy.
Yeah.
When we talk about that, remember I told you about that documentary that everybody needs to check out. What was it?
Oh, yeah. It's The Ultimate Human or something.
Yeah.
No,
it was,
that's Scary Breakfast podcast.
The Perfect Human Diet.
Perfect Human Diet. Yeah, that's it.
And this guy did, he wound up with a heart attack, right? So he did this study over the years. And when they looked at the scientists who would go and pull up our ancestors, what they would finding out what they ate, of course, what they ate, the first thing that they apparently what they would consume would be the brain. Just like you're talking about with the natural carnivores that are, like the wolf, right?
That's why you don't find
the coyote.
The skull's away from the body. They take the skull and they every crevice of the skull.
Now think about this. They're having to, because their source of food is to, they have to track this thing down and kill it. So they're going to go after the highest source first, because who knows, maybe a bigger animal is going to come run them off. But they're going to get that energy first, because again, they may not eat again for another day or two. Right?
A week.
So, this is nature. It knows. And so good point there. Real good point there with cholesterol. But, so if we have something that's nature's most powerful, again, I say it again, cost effective. I mean, it's priceless because it doesn't really cost anything. Get out in the sun, eat the plant, right? Get the chlorophyll. So reduce the BDNF that we're talking about with a food that basically the most powerful source under the sun, like I said from the beginning. So, when it comes to aging, man, you can, I know people, you can nip the fat and you can tuck the wrinkles. I mean, that's sort of what we do here, right? And, that's superficial signs of degeneration and aging, right? Or you can go, boom, for the cause from the inside, from the most powerful source found from the outside, right? Our sun. And again, if you think about it, the very source of all life itself. Wow. Powerful little supplement. God-given. All you got to do is look up, get outside, place to start, eat your veggies. So, again, anything you want to add to that? Awesome. Hopefully, again, and please don't forget opine. Hit the button, bell, ring, thumb up, whatever it is that, tell us that you're at least listening anyway. And again, remember, stay consciously aware of your awareness of consciousness. Or, AKA, as I like to say, have yourself a great day.
So you're not missing one.
There you go. Till next time.